Hi, my name is Panos Bazos. I'm a specialist orthodontist and I'm one of the founding members of the Bioemulation Group. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what we call biosolutions, meaning image modalities within the cross-polarized technique. So back in 2014 with Sasha Hein, Javier Tapia Guadix, and Lucas Naves, we had a beautiful article in the Quintessence of Dental Technology, which we call Beyond Visible, and it speaks a little bit about the modern imaging modalities of reflective cross-polarized photography as well as fluorescence photography. So with regards to cross-polarization, we need to look at the history of the technique and when it originated and how it's evolved. And the history actually, it goes back to the legend of the Vikings using calcite, or what we call the Solarstein, in the past for their navigation in the Northern Sea. Legend has it that in an overcast day, they would be using a birefringent material which is called calcite, and they would actually locate a sun ray and get their bearing within the North Sea. Now, the first time we cross the reference about polarization is in the 17th century with Rasmus Bartholin. More recently, in 1941, Edmund Land had the patent for cross-polarization film, and this is actually what we're using currently today in the industry. So when we talk about light, we're looking to talk about the electromagnetic spectrum, and human vision, visible light, is anywhere between 390 nanometers to 750 nanometers. And if you look at light, light is not only a particle, but it is also a wave. And we can see in this present animation how light propagates. Light propagates on multiple planes. It's not only on one plane. And it propagates obviously very quickly, what we know as the speed of light. So a beam, any kind of light source, is going to propagate as a wave and also as a particle. Currently, the polarization technology that we have from the 1940s acts like a grid, as shown in this animation. And this grid is a directional grid. So essentially, when light passes through, only a particular beam is going to make it through that is in the same plane of polarization. The other technique that we have is to use two different polarizers, but to orient them within 90 degrees of one another. And this is the technique that we call cross-polarization, which means it's going to limit and it's going to allow several beams are going to pass, others are not going to pass. With regards to translational applications of reflective cross-polarized photography, we have to go back to the fields of medicine. And the two dominant specialties have been ophthalmology and dermatology. We have references dating back to the 1930s with regards to ophthalmology. And with regards to dermatology, we have references back in the 1950s. So this isn't a new technique. This is a new technique perhaps for dentistry, but it's been part of the medical sciences for quite some time. So with regards to cross-polarization, there are two major categories. The first category is what we call transmissive cross-polarization. The second category is reflective cross-polarization. Transmissive cross-polarization actually are those beautiful birefringent images that we see of enamel in cross-sections, this kaleidoscope of color. And a really cool publication back in 2011, the Quintessence of Dental Technology, really talks about and explains this technique thoroughly. The technique that is of particular interest to me is reflective cross-polarized photography. And if we look at the inception when this technique actually developed, the earliest information that we have is back in 1987 in a publication from Peter Gordon and Phil Wander in the United Kingdom. This is the original concept that I was able to locate. Now, there have been other publications over time. Other publications that sensationalize this technique are the Vanini articles, Lorenzo Vanini and Francesco Mangani, back in 1996 and 2001. And more recently, we saw some articles come out from the team from the University of Athens, as well as from Wolfgang Bengel back in 2006. And they focused primarily on the digital cross-polarization. So the company that really helped us in this technology was the Olympus company back in 1978 when they provided a cross-polarizer for the analogic technique. With regards to Project Polarized, the photographic filter, this has been very dear to me. Now, this is what I believe. Great products and concepts are never really invented by any of us. They've always existed, hidden there in front of us, invisible, waiting to be discovered or resurrected. So with regards to cross-polarization, this was tasked upon the bioemulation group. This project started back in 2005 and it materialized back in 2011. Now, cross-polarized light, what are the advantages? Well, reflective cross-polarized light mitigates unwanted specular reflections, which obscure the fine details of dental structures, whilst providing a high-contrast, hypersaturated dental image that can be objectively analyzed. With regards to the major advantages of this technique, it completely eliminates glare, it enhances contrast and saturation, it's a non-destructive, non-contact technique, it has ergonomic design, it's simple, there isn't a significant learning curve, and it's fairly economical if you already own a DSLR camera. So if we go back to the 9 elements of visual synthesis, with regards to the cross-polarization technique, it focuses primarily on the objective elements of hue, chroma, and value. When you purchase and receive your Polarized, you have to go through what you call the initial setup. That's the purification of the surface of the lens. You wipe it down with a clean cloth and some alcohol. You peel off the tabs for the magnets. You place in the proper orientation and align the filter with the flash, and ultimately you apply some finger pressure, being firm, so you can tack down your magnets. That is the setup of your new cross-polarization filter. The following animation helps us understand exactly what is going on with regards to the cross-polarization. So first, the polarizer is fastened and secured via the magnets. And this is what happens afterwards with regards to the flash. Specular reflections, they make it through the side polarizers, but they cannot enter the central polarizer. What actually happens is the light that comes from the side polarizers of the flash provides diffuse reflection, which ultimately makes it back within the sensor and you get the proper exposure. So a common question is, what are the applications of reflective cross-polarized photography in the daily dental practice? Well, one of the most important fields that we recommend is oral pathology and diagnosis. As you can see from the depictions, this is an oral lichen planus. We can see an extraoral lesion, a melanosis in this depiction. And finally, you can see another extraoral lesion, a neoplasm. So this can be a very accurate diagnostic tool, eliminating the surface reflections so we can have an unobscured, high contrast, high fidelity image via reflective cross-polarization for our diagnosis. Another specialty where we can use reflective cross-polarized imaging is the specialty of orthodontics. And this is particularly useful and helpful in the white spot lesion detection, essentially talking about early demineralization diagnostics. Ultimately, we recommend cross-polarization for the restorative indirect technique, and it can be used in many different ways. In this particular slide, provided by one of our master ceramists in the bioemulation group, Mr. Jungo Endo, he is using it for gingival ceramic integration on an implant prosthesis. Another way to use it is for shade estimation. Mr. August Bruguera of Barcelona, also one of our dental technicians in bioemulation, is using it for extracoronal ceramics. We can see under black and white exposure, the value of the central is very well matched via this cross-polarization technique. So it's also recommended when you're going to try to be efficient. Now, back in 2013 with Michel Magnier, we had a publication in the journal Cosmetic Dentistry, and we talked a little bit about this technique with regards to being efficient and getting the match right the first time. We introduced also the concept of not only a non-reflective cross-polarized on the left, reflective cross-polarized on the center, but hyper-reflective cross-polarized, which is an enhanced imaging modality of the cross-polarization technique. You can also use the polarized filter in bleaching control. In the following case, we initiated bleaching by the maxillary arch. Once they completed their bleaching, we shot with the filter, and we can see the difference between the upper and the lower arches right here. Definitely you can use cross-polarization in your daily clinical work. This is a normal image, and this would be the effects of a cross-polarized image. As you can see, it mitigates all specular reflections. In the daily clinical application, you can use it for composites primarily. So here is a case where you can see on the left a normal illuminated photograph. On the right, you can see one with cross-polarization. And this is immediately after the restoration. So we still have a little bit of dehydration going on. However, we can see that the fidelity is high in the optical integration. And this only took us about 20 minutes because we were very quick and we were very targeted and specific with regards to what composite masses we wanted to use. So for the direct composite technique, I strongly recommend using this particular filter.
DentalPhotomaster.com